Okay. Now, now I can come back to where I was. No, not here. Um, okay, so we'll just record now. So it's Mari-Lyn Harris here of Harder Work. I'm doing my podcast called "In Creative and Impactful Legacy." And today I have on my call is Garland Vance.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. And yourself?
Doing well, thank you. It's actually snowing outside my window. Nothing is sticking, but it's still a beautiful to look at.
Yeah, awesome. So whereabouts are you based out of, Garland?
I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, so East
Oh,
Tennessee.
that's a long ways away from California.
It is. That is.
Yeah. So what do you like about living in Tennessee?
Yeah, well, so my family, my wife and I actually 3 years ago packed up our house. We were living in Texas, and we had this dream of moving to East Tennessee, living in the Smoky Mountains, being able to go hike on Fridays and Saturdays, and just love this area, love the people in this area, had some friends here. And so we packed up everything and said, let's move to East Tennessee.
Cool, cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's it's always interesting to say, like, okay, you can move anywhere. Where do you want to move, Mari-Lyn? Okay, let's go to California.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So yeah, totally get what you're saying. You arrive and you say, okay, this is really good, and then, okay, now what? Next.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
now let's get to know people and find where we're going to live. And
Yeah,
yes, all
yeah,
those things.
yeah. It's all that fun, exciting stuff. So, Garland, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Maybe you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what your claim to fame is, and how do you create your impactful legacy?
Sure. So, Dr. Garland Vance, again from Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm the co founder of Advanced Leadership, which is a consulting organization that works with executive leaders and entrepreneurs and their teams to help live and lead with purpose, productivity, and peace. So, purpose is all about knowing what your why is,
Right.
productivity is doing your why, and then peace is actually being able to rest in your why. And so my wife and I started this company about 3 years ago. Claim to fame, I would say I kind of have two claims to fame.
Okay.
One of those is I have had 6 concussions, none of those from full contact sports. In fact, 4 of those came from the terrible sport of kickball when I was in middle school.
Oh.
And so I've had a lot of traumatic brain injuries over the years. And the second is I'm actually the author of the book Getting Unbusy, which you can see right behind me. Getting
Hmm.
Unbusy: 5 Steps to Kill Busyness and Live with Purpose, Productivity, and Peace, which was named by Forbes as one of the books everyone on your team should read.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious of what you mean by unbusy. I guess
Yeah.
it's just to be like you were saying earlier, it's about getting into the peace of where you are and just resting in the peace, knowing that everything is flowing, right?
Yeah, that's definitely a part of it. For if you've heard people talk, you'll hear them say all the time, how are you doing? Somebody will ask you how you're doing, and you'll
Yeah.
say, oh, I'm really good. I'm just so busy. And when I was back in 2013, I had this experience where I was experiencing all of these physical problems. Went to my doctor to find out, why am I having chronic migraine headaches and heart palpitations and exhaustion and forgetfulness and all these things. And as I began to explain my life
Mm-hmm.
to my doctor of, working 50, 60 hours a week and
Hmm.
working on a doctoral program and 3 young kids at home and all that stuff, he said, Garland, what you're experiencing is stress. And the reason that you're stressed out is because you're so busy. And so I
Uh,
ended up focusing my doctoral research around busyness and what it's actually doing to leaders and high
mhm.
achievers. And so here's the answer to your question. So busyness is actually an overcommitment to too many good commitments. Busyness happens when we have so many good commitments in our life, work
Right.
and kids and community activities and fill in the blank with all of the great things that we're doing. But busyness happens when we have so many of those good things that when you
Hmm.
add them all together, they become bad. And
Right.
so getting unbusy is all about getting some of those good commitments out of our lives so that we
Hmm.
can do the great things. And yes, there's a ton of peace that comes from that.
Right, right. As you're saying, I'm always saying, I'm busy, I'm busy. I am busy. But
Yeah.
it's just, mostly just due to one project, right?
Yeah.
So once that's off my plate, then I have lots of space, right? But but yeah, I sort of get what you mean as to learning to be unbusy. I think probably changing our language around that too would help. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Can I tell you a funny story
yeah,
around that
sure.
real quick?
Go ahead.
So we have three kids, 16, 14, and 10. And a couple of months ago, my wife had several commitments that she was working on at one time, and she was working longer hours. And my 10-year-old son said, "Hey, Mom, can I talk to you about something? You're acting kind of B-wordish." And we all got like really, the rest of us got really big eyes. And we were like, oh my gosh, Toby, what are you about to say to your mom? And he said, you're acting a little busy. And so I said, at that moment, I said it in my mind to make busy the bad word for in our society. It's going to be the next B word for us.
Yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. Like you were saying, you're expecting another word to come out, but he was just kind of copying what you guys are teaching, right?
Yes,
You guys aren't
absolutely.
following your own um, method or your purpose, whatever,
Right.
trying to get people to be unbusy. And here you
Yeah.
guys are being busy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. So tell me a little bit more about how you got into doing what you're doing, being unbusy from being busy.
Yeah. So after that doctor's appointment and really kind of having a wake up call of, really I was having all of these physical problems, and
Hmm.
my doctor tells me I'm busy. And my first reaction was I didn't believe him. Like I didn't really think that busyness was doing all of this damage. So I
Right,
started doing the research on
right.
it of just, where does stress come from and what does overcommitment look like and what happens physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, what happens to our productivity, what happens to entire companies that are too busy. And
Right.
as I started looking at that research, the first step was, it was just kind of this, oh my gosh, my doctor was right. I mean, imagine that. He knows what he's
Mhm.
talking about, but my doctor was right. And it really is, this busyness is doing significant damage to me. And then so then I just started all of this research, and part of it was for my own benefit. I was kind of using myself as a guinea pig
Right.
of what does this look like to go through, to go from being stressed and exhausted and
Hmm.
overwhelmed to having peace in life. And then the other part is, as I was also guinea pigging on myself, I was working with other people and trying to help them
Right.
get a sense of peace in their life. And so there emerged this pretty clear process. It took me about 2.5, 3 years to figure it out, but there emerged a really clear process to help people go through those stages.
Right. Right. And do you find the type of people you work with are more about individuals themselves, or do you work with groups of people, or
Yeah, it's a
work?
mix of both.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay.
mix of both. So I do work with a lot of high achievers, a lot of leaders who just individually say, I need
Right.
to fix this in my own life. But what I started finding is, as I was working with those people, that they would then turn around and say, okay, now the biggest cause of stress in my life is the team that I'm working with and how many commitments I have at work. And,
Hmm.
the organization still expects me to work 60, 70 or more hours a week. So how do we begin fixing this organizationally? And that's led to some opportunities to work more and more with teams of people
Right.
who want to get unbusy together.
Yeah, because I can imagine that, in your workplace, you have more than one project going on, right? And then you might have one person overseeing all of that, or you might have several people overseeing different projects, right? And that
Yeah.
would get
Yeah. Well,
overwhelming.
it's interesting. So David Allen is this guy who wrote a book called Getting Things Done. And
Yeah.
he estimated, and this was probably 10, 15 years ago that he estimated this, but he estimated that the average person has 50 to 100 projects on their plate at any time. Now, he
Wow.
defines a project as anything that requires 2 or more steps. So, changing the filter in your refrigerator would be a multi-step project. But he
Right.
says the average person has 50 to 100 projects on their plate at any time. No
Wow.
wonder we're so busy.
Yeah. Because, most of the time, if I say I'm busy, it's because I'm doing projects, within myself or helping other people and stuff. I don't consider my personal stuff as projects.
Mm,
But I can see how that would accumulate into busyness.
yeah.
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 Yeah. So, what are some of the biggest challenges you think people have about being busy?
So great question. So I think that the biggest challenge that people have is one, an assumption that busyness is good, right?
Right.
That's what we say all the time,
Right.
right? I'm busy. And we really mean it as like, hey, I'm important. Look at me. I've got
Yeah.
a lot on my plate. So when we have this assumption that busyness is good, it is really hard to hear this message of no, actually it's doing damage to you, and you would be able to accomplish so much more if you
Right.
got some of that busyness out of your life. And then I think a second area that I call them the 3 inhibiting beliefs that keep us trapped in busyness, and it's I need to be more, I need to do more, and I need to get more.
Right.
So many of us are busy because, and that first one is killer. I need to be more. It's this belief that I am not enough,
Hmm.
that and this happens for me. I'm a big avid reader,
Right.
and when I was going to bookstores before the pandemic, this happened to me all the time. I'd go into a bookstore and I'd go through the health section, and I'd see this book with some chiseled guy, and it's get a 6-pack of abs in 90 days, and I immediately begin shaming myself. Wow, I don't have a 6-pack of abs like that. What's wrong with me?
Hmm.
And then I go into the leadership section, and it's talking about how to be a better leader. And I'm like, man, I need to be a better leader. And then I go into the parenting section, and it talks about how to be a better parent. I'm like, oh gosh, my kids, I'm probably putting them through significant amounts of counseling right now. And and so we have all of these thoughts about ourselves that create shame. And when
Hmm.
we start feeling that shame, that sense of I'm not enough, I need to be more,
Right.
our automatic reaction to it is, okay, what do I need to do?
Right.
Right? What do I need to read? What program do I need to go to? What do I need to fix about myself? And when you start thinking that way, busyness happens really quickly,
Hmm.
because it's a gut reaction to I'm not enough. Something's
Hmm.
wrong with me. So I think that's really one of the biggest challenges that people have in beating busyness.
Right. Yeah. Because soon as you were talking about that, oh, he's talking about me.
Yeah.
So,
And that's a common reaction. People are like, hey, did you get inside my
yeah.
head? And it's, well, no, I just studied what was going on,
Right.
in these high achievers. And that's what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of, we have all had to pivot or redirect ourselves during the pandemic, right? Because maybe we were doing before, we've had to end or we've had to change or figure out, okay, what's next? What do you really want to do? And then focus on that and then figure out how you're going to monetize it, right?
Yeah.
Or how you're going to do it to, make some effort into it. And so I guess, the podcast series for me was something I started. And yes, it's a lot of work, but I get a lot of enjoyment out of it because I get to meet some incredible people doing incredible things, right? Such
Yeah.
as yourself. So it's really an enjoyment. It's not, unfortunately, it can't be live. Like we're live as much as live we can get.
Right. Right.
Without me physically going to your house to interview you. But yeah, so it's very interesting, and that part of it is busy. But I wonder if there's a different type of busy, if there's a busyness in just being busy, or is there an actually busy that you actually are busy, or would you just maybe find another word for that?
Yeah. So I would talk about the difference between purposeful and
Yeah.
busy.
Right.
So a highly purposeful person is going to be really clear on what it is that they're trying to accomplish.
Right.
And then they're going to give their time, energy, and attention to that to
Right.
the best of their abilities, right? And so it's really kind of eliminating as much out of your life that distracts you from
Right.
those things that are incredibly purposeful for you. So for some people, that might mean kind of saying no to friends for a
Right.
time, or it might be that there's a project that you're excited about, but you're actually going to say no to it for a time so that you can
Mm-hmm.
concentrate on the more important project that you want to work on. So I think there are a lot of people who just automatically say yes. In fact, I call it default to yes. Like when, and they give, anytime they see a new and bright and shiny opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
that they immediately go, yeah, I want to do that, without actually thinking about the ripple effect that it will have on every other area of your life.
Yeah. It sounds as what you're saying is like, how we all want to join groups and networking and, do all our stuff. That keeps us busy. But it's like we have to stop and think, okay, what are the costs? Do I have the time? Do I have the financial resources to keep it ongoing, right?
Yep.
Whether we say, yes, I want to join you, but oh, by the way, we have these fees, these fees, these fees. Like, can you commit to that? And do you have the time in your day or week or month to commit to that?
Yeah.
So it's not just, as you were saying, your projects at work or other things or shiny objects that come your way, but also to take a look at, is there a group that you could join that you can commit and just have that one group rather than
Mm.
having two or three groups to join,
Right.
right?
Right. That's, it's funny. That's actually what I did this year with social media. I was on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and LinkedIn. I was on all of those things, and I wasn't doing any of them well at all.
Right.
And so I took a step back, and it was, well, what if I only did one of these, but I went all in
Right.
with it? And so all those other ones, I've just said, for the time being, I'm going to ignore all those others. For me, it was LinkedIn. I'm going to be all in on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I'm going to
Yeah.
go all in there. But it's amazing how much that has kind of shut down a lot of stress. It's kind of like when you
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of windows open on your computer and it eats up all that RAM, and then you
Yeah.
start closing the windows and your RAM frees up and your computer moves faster and you don't have so many glitches. I find that's what's happening even in my own mind, just by
Mm-hmm.
shutting off my access to some of those other social media platforms.
Yeah, yeah. And for the people that, I used to be in social media a lot and I used to belong to, oh my gosh, I must have 10 channels open that I was plugging into. And now I've kind of really narrowed it down. I'm still into, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, um, and not very much Instagram right now, just because I'm doing something different. But, say four things. But I think, the challenges that people just need to, as far as social media goes, is, pick maybe max
Yeah.
three. And because, but, with three, you can hook one into the next one, into the next one. So you're only posting once, right?
Right. Right.
And still do the three. So yeah, it's learning to take your busyness, break it down, and see how you can maybe accomplish still the three, but how can I do three well,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have
And so I talk about, in the book, I talk about that whole idea of defaulting to yes, and then
right,
changing that and saying, instead, what we want to do is we want to defend our yes.
right,
So instead, when somebody asks you to do something, you want your yes to have three characteristics. The first is you want it to be slow. And so a lot of
hmm,
times, even if I have an idea for myself, I'll
right,
almost say to myself, hey, can I have 48 hours to think about that? Just give me
yeah,
some time to,
yeah,
I don't need to give you an answer right now. So,
right,
so first it's a slower yes. The second is it's a careful yes. In other words, you think about the ripple effect that you were
right,
talking about of, okay, if I say yes to this, then what are all of the additional unintended challenges I'm going to have? So if my kid signs up to play in a baseball league, I need to think in terms of, oh, it's not just 2 games a week and a practice 3 nights a week. That's also traveling to the games. That's,
Hmm.
it's the gas, it's the
Yeah.
having to come, having to get away from the office early. So am I willing to take those ripple effects? And then the third characteristic of a well-defended yes is that it subtracts before it adds. And so before you add anything else into your life, you're saying, okay, is there anything I can get rid of
Hmm.
in order to make sure that I definitely have the time and the energy and the attention for this?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just kind of like the same, but just a bit different. Everybody has to think about. I like the idea of breaking it down, like you were saying. So give me 48 hours and let me figure out how this is going to impact my life. How is it going
Right.
to impact my life? And what do I need to change in myself to do that? You
Right.
know,
Absolutely.
and I think what you're saying too is we are so used to saying yes, 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 and more opportunities come to us. Or else somebody will say, another guru will say yes and you'll figure it out. Yeah, but in the meantime, you're suffering somewhere.
Right. Exactly.
You're suffering in your health, or you're suffering in your mind brain, or it's about to explode to you. So, it's a very interesting concept about
Hmm.
being busy,
Hmm.
that we are addicted to being busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. So, can you give us some couple of stories of how you've helped your clients work? Like,
Sure.
I'm sure you have some a couple of stories, little, it doesn't have to be a big story, but maybe just
Yeah.
something that, you've had success.
Yeah, I'll tell you two, one from a personal and one from a professional one, that two that I'm super proud of. So from the personal level, so I worked with a client named Jessica,
Yeah.
who she and I were actually friends. She
Hmm.
is at the time that we were working together, she was the mother of 5. She's now the mother of 6. One of those kids is a special needs child, and so she is the epitome of busy, right? She was a high
Yeah.
achiever. All of her kids were involved in multiple activities every night of the week. And we started talking through getting unbusy and just how do you get unbusy as a family. And
Right.
that's one of the chapters in my book that's toward the very end, is drawing your family into
Hmm.
to getting unbusy. And so they eliminated significant amounts of nightly activities. And what it led to is they ended up having all of this time for spontaneous time with their family, for spontaneous opportunities. So my favorite moment with her is she tagged me on Facebook. She had her family had planned or had taken a last minute trip to Disney World,
Hmm.
and just said, hey, getting unbusy is the life for us,
Yeah.
because we had the opportunity to say we're available this weekend to go, so let's just go. So I love that. I love
Yeah.
this intentionality of parenting,
Hmm.
that she was able to do. And then one other person who, I'll tell you about, a guy named Mike. And so this is more on the professional side,
Yeah.
but it had a big impact. Mike was a crazy high achiever, sales manager of a region for a Fortune 500 company. He was also the president of a nationwide association. Just crazy busy and busy all the time. And even in the midst of all of that craziness, many of
Hmm.
which those he couldn't get out of those commitments anytime, he just made a commitment that he was going to do everything in his power to slow down and to be more intentional. And then when his year of being the president of the association was up, that he would finally implement getting unbusy. And
Right.
just so he and I talk on an almost monthly basis,
Right.
and I've done a lot of other business together. But for him, just being able to slow down, to be with his wife, to be with he has 2 daughters, to enjoy time with
Right.
them, and his results are also through the roof because
Hmm.
he's actually able to concentrate on those biggest priorities at work as well.
Right. Right. Yeah. Sometimes, we just have to let go what isn't working for us. Or sometimes, if we're in a stressful moment, is just say, okay, just gonna let it go.
Yeah.
It'll resolve itself, And it's sort of like trusting the process, right?
Yeah,
Trusting the
absolutely.
process that if I get unbusy, that'll work better for me than if I stay busy,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the audience about either your book or about your services?
Yeah, I would say the one thing I would love to share with them is, we've been in this pandemic now for a while, and
Yeah.
it's, we're seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. But when the pandemic first hit, it forced people to become a bit unbusy, and
Right.
we couldn't do the community activities. We could. There's
Right.
so much that we lost, and I think we're actually it's interesting what we did. So studies have shown that the average person who's working, even if they're working from home, they're now working 3 hours more per day
Right.
than ever before. And we are, as we get closer and closer to the end of this thing, I think there's going to be a tendency to jump head first back
Right.
into the craziness of life. And so there's this real danger of going back, going all in and
Right.
having just crazy busy time that comes out. And so I would really encourage people to take a step back before you dive in and say, okay, what is the pace of life that we want to live?
Mm-hmm.
And what are we going to do to make sure that it's not faster and more hectic than what we want?
Right. Right. Yeah, it's a good question to ask for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, I can certainly see that all of a sudden everybody's, oh yeah, I get to do this, but maybe not. Maybe they'll say, hey, I really like my life the way it is. I don't need
Yeah.
to do all that stuff,
Yeah.
or we might do it, but not as often, kind
Yeah.
of thing. Yeah, cool, really cool. So I'd love to hear about anybody that has questions, and uh, if you want to reach out to Garland, you can find him at podcast.heartatworkonline.org. That's where all the podcasts are listed. And then plus on the YouTube channel as well. You can find out more information about him there as well. So Garland, thank you so much for joining me today. I so appreciate it.
My
And
pleasure.
I do hope that everybody can look you up and say, hey, I really got to get unbusy. And
Yes.
enjoy to be unbusy,
Yes.
to have
Let's
that
do it.
peace and that calmness about everything that's going on in the world right now. Yeah.
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 Thanks so much.
Okay. Hey, you're so welcome. And my last words of the day is always be kind to yourself and everyone else because that's all we have. So